What's up, everyone? This is Ignatius. Today is going to be my final video on the Cast and Crit Infinite Resource Infernalist for the .5 League. I've got a very carefully organized video for you here. I'm going to cover over my final form variant, some things I still haven't done to it yet because I'm poor, and how you can optimize the build. I'll have a showcase of a 200% Deli map, all that good stuff. Introduction, this isn't an easy build. If you are new or you're not interested in a challenge, don't do this build. If you are new and you are interested in a challenge, see my first video. I cover all the details, including lots of math, charts, what the interactions are, what's going on. Talk about them in my Mobalytics guide as well. Come to Discord if there's a particular thing you cannot figure out after using all the resources that have been provided. And this is not a video showing a cheap version. This is expensive as hell. I don't RMT and I don't do a lot of hideout warrior stuff, so it's not your Temporalis / adorned, rare jewel setup type version, but it is expensive. We're in the many hundreds of divines on this build. All right, with that out of the way, before I dive into the build itself, I want to call out 3 areas where you need to make big choices in terms of what you want your endgame version of this archetype to look like. The name of the archetype is very generic. You're going to be using Cast and Crit, and you're going to have Infinite Resource, and you're going to be on Infernalist. But you get to kind of pick the skills to slot in and some of the interactions you want to favor over the others. First choice you have to make is whether you want to use Frostbolt or Spark as your main skill. I will say that Frostbolt is faster and a bit cleaner, and I would say it's slightly better than Spark net in easier maps. So 6 mod non-delied maps, Spark is so fast. You can slot in low life with blink. You blink, tap, tap, blink, tap, tap. My last video shows some gameplay of that on a very weak version, and is just really, really efficient. However, once you get into the harder content, especially the 200% Deli type stuff, and if you want to be maximally efficient with clearing the whole screen, Frostbolt can be a little intermittently selective about what minions it hits. Spark is not, and we're also using Arc, making it even more comprehensive. So if you're just wanting to push to the best version possible, make plans to switch to Spark, and all you Spark bros in the Discord, you were right all along. That's choice 1. Choice number 2, Demon Form versus Low Life. So quick recap of what choice you're making on the Descendancy here. So these 2 nodes are pretty much essential. Pyromantic Pack is our infinite resources. Grinning Immolation is how we get a massive crit bonus and also continue to capitalize on our persistent recoup. But then you get to decide whether to go here for infinite Demon Flame on Demon Form, or go down here for lots of Spirit and permanent low life setup. Some low life tech. I'm going to cover the pros and cons of both versions here. That was kind of the quick recap. So Demon Form, you have infinite damage scaling. In my showcase and in my maps, I usually get up to about 100 ticks and then I reset. It's just it's just not enjoyable to have to manage it after that, and you don't really need more. There's times where I phase out a Demon Form and I have plenty of damage anyway. But anyway, there's an infinite damage ceiling, and that can also augment poorer items. If your items suck, well, Demon Form can scale, and all you have to scale is recoup, which is really cheap. You can just do it on the tree and a few key items. So yeah, infinite damage scaling. Higher cast speed, and this is a big deal. It gets you into a net recoup situation. On my low life Frostbolt variant, my average recoup per second was 5 to 6k. On the Spark variant is 6 to 8k, and that is because you can scale cast speed more, and the Demon Form herself has cast speed on her, and Spark is just very fast with proj speed. So you get more recoup and longer Demon Form, that kind of thing. In a lot of situations, the Demon Dodge is better than Blink, and that's because you don't have to use any scripts to manage the sprint after Blink. It's also because you can just continue to hold down Spark and Spellslinger. I do it with right click and middle mouse, and then Demon Dodge, and that's how you go through the whole map. You basically don't have to ever let go of the skill buttons if you don't want to. Lastly, and I think there's a huge upside, you get to wear a real belt. Now, here's what sucks about Demon Form. It's more overhead. You do have to, pre-buff for a few seconds at every map, and you do have to reset her at a certain point unless you get your recoup up into the 10k, which I have seen some people do, and they get them to 240 stacks. That's amazing. But for me and what I'm doing, I have to reset her usually at least once per map. Most likely you can't use the Trickster support. Now, I've dropped it in both versions anyway, just because it's annoying and you don't ultimately need it. But with Demon Form, it's laggier and the sounds are just brutal. Like, you listen to her die the whole time. Or you can turn the sound off if you want, but you can't really use Trickster on Demon Form. I guess you don't really need to, but that'd be one of the downsides. And then lastly, you don't get the free spirit from Baydot's Will. Now, you do get to drop Blink, so that's minus 60, but you needed spirit on gear. The only other gear you get it from is the chest, so then you got to go for a spirit prefix on the amulet, which gets expensive. I mean, that's 100D plus amulet as soon as you need spirit. It's only like 20D if you don't need spirit. All right, low life variant. Quick recap of what this is. So you're taking this node here that reserves 25% of your life, and then you're going to wear the belt that counts you as being on low life when you are at 75% or below. So now you're considered permanently low life, and there's some various buffs you get because of this. You get to take Pain Attunement for 30% more crit bonus. That's more than half of this entire Ascendancy node, so that's insane. And then you get increased cast speed when on low life, and then you can also use the Execute Support Gem, which is a perma 30% more damage for anything you want to link it into, which is better than any static support gem you can put in. So here's the upsides of the low life variant. Much higher crit bonus scaling. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean net more damage, and because of the Demon Form stacks, I think Demon Form hits a higher damage ceiling. However, there's no overhead for your damage. You don't have to, uptime the Demon Form, constantly combat degeneration, that kind of things, reset her. You're just playing. You have easy access to spirit. You don't need it on gear. If you want a little bit more, you just nudge your life up and you're double dipping. You get to run actual blink. Highly recommend using the blink script to cancel the post blink sprint, which they thought they eliminated, but they didn't. I have it right here. It's a must use for actual blink, but actual blink is really nice. It's still better than the demon dodge. You can blink over terrain. You can be a little bit more tactical in combat, that kind of thing. And then using Trickster support isn't as bad, especially if you're in the Frostbolt variant. Trickster is really helpful for clear. And then the downsides, probably can assume these by now after this overview, but it's less overall damage, and you have to use gems for damage. And that's kind of something I didn't really realize. Like, using Execute 3 is cool. You get 30% more, but you're at 30% more on 10 stacks of Demon Form, and you have a gem slot. So, like, yes, gems for damage, Execute 3 is insane, but there you go. Your slot is gone for damage. My Spark link up on Demon Form is all utility gems. I mean, Pinpoint counts, I suppose, but really we're just trying to proc more cast on crit with the Pinpoint. The damage change there is actually not that dramatic. So it's 4 total utility supports and then 1, pseudo damage support. And yeah, having to use your gems for damage is a bummer. It's a downside. And then you rely on Comet for big targets. In the Demon Form version, you can run Rakiatas on Spark and then go lightning spells in your cast on crit, and you don't need Comet. And there's no reliance on, big procs of Comets, even for Uber bosses. You just have to have decent Demon Form stacks, even for the hardest bosses. You have to wear this crappy belt. The belt doesn't do anything but give you low life. And then you have lower cast speed, so ultimately less recoup, 1-for-1. All right. In my, obviously, you can probably tell, I chose to go Demon Form, and I did test out both with Frostbolt and with Spark. Choice number 3, your Spellslinger links and your Cast on Crit links. So for Spellslinger, I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different things. If you don't know for some reason, Spellslinger is granted to you by a dueling wand. You can upgrade it to level 20 with one of the new runes. And then you can also quality your wand to get the quality on the Spellslinger gem. And then it gives you this. Oh, you can also Perfect Jewelers your wand to get a 6 link. It doesn't have to be a level 20 this season, which is awesome. Now what happens is you generate energy. You can see it going up over here in the corner. And as soon as you hit 100, you can tap Spellslinger. And with no cast time at all, you'll see use time is instant. You trigger everything. Boom. It all goes off. That's Spellslinger. Now, here are 2 approaches that I've seen very common for Spellslinger. The first one is full utility. You can generate runic infusions, which requires ward, and you can generate your power / frenzy endurance charges. I think this is really, really good for Spark. It saves space on the tree. The cold infused spark is not only double plus damage depending on the number of ticks the sparks hit, but it's also fires sparks in a circular motion with more projectiles. So the clear is like so much better on cold infused spark. Now, it does mean that if you want things like Firewall, Orb of Storms, Frostbomb, you have to manually cast these, and that's what I have down here for certain situations. They're not as rotation dense as they are in the campaign. Use them when it makes sense. The other approach to Spellslinger is a mix of utility and damage. The first, sort of cornerstone is to throw in an actual spark there with a blind 2. All enemies are blinded, and then you can run blindside support in your main gems for more crit chance and more crit bonus. This is particularly better in the low life variant since you're already scaling crit bonus. The other thing you can do is Flame Wall with Arbiter's Ignition. The cast time of Flame Wall is not cool. It's down to 35.35 here, but it is kind of bulky. And so having it on Spellslinger means it's just like permanently up. The Flame Wall is always there, and you don't have to stop sparking in order to shoot a Flame Wall. And then I've seen Orb of Storms in there for the cold infusions. Basically, you run the elemental equilibrium here, and the orb generates your cold infusions. You run it with Overabundance and Unleash, and you get 2 per. And they're like constantly there, because you just basically never let go of Spellslinger. All right, so those are 2 options. Seen a lot of other options like in the middle of these decisions. And in our Spark Stuff Infernalist Discord, we've got a sub channel called Pushing to God Tier, where people are doing crazy things with the build. A lot of it is like high budget things, but some of it is like, look at what I did with Spellslinger. And it's pretty cool. I'll go over in depth what I'm doing with Spellslinger when I get to my actual build. Next big choice is your cast on crit links. Here's the standard min-max link. Double comets, add a Louis, which is 1 support for each comet, and then Boundless 2, which is 1 support for the cast on crit, and then Utrids, which is +2, +4, +6. 6 skill levels among those 3. That's your standard min-max link. Adaluise is essential. You will commit suicide constantly with this build, or at some point in some boss or some situation if you don't Adaluise. It also lets you double dip your recoup. Because you constantly have life and ES recoup going on because of Sacrosanctum, if you run out of Louis, you're actually double dipping those pools and spending resources in both. Then there's the Comet utility link. So this is like a lower budget, or maybe you don't want to hurt yourself that badly so constantly. This would be Comet, Cascade, Adaluise, Boundless 2, and then your choice of a damage gem. And then there's the Lightning link, and this is my preferred. So in my variant, we don't care about cold damage, we don't care about cold scaling, we don't care about cold skills. It's sort of this weird like tension in a Comet Spark build where you need to skill Lightning and cold if you want to continue to like push the boundaries of both gems. But then the Lightning link, you get 2 things. First of all, it's Arc and Lightning Warp, and then your supports with Scions for Arc. The Arc helps with the totality of the clear. It will angle around corners in ways that Spark can't, and it also is a direct chain from one minion to the next, whereas even in a dense Spark situation, Spark will miss some spots. Obviously in this little thing where it's bouncing on these dimensions, it's not missing anything, but in larger zones it will. And I'll talk again more about that when I get to my actual build. Okay, now let's dive into my final form version for this build. So we focus on Arc, Lightning Warp, Cast Speed, Rockiata, and Infusions. These are all like distinct things compared to other ways of scaling this archetype, this Infernalist archetype. The reason I leaned in this direction, and I've been like testing things out for 2 straight weeks, just, pushing ideas in, a direction each day, and just sort of seeing how things feel in real situations and learning and refining. The reason I like this is that it scales speed, it scales the efficiency of your clear, and you can scale rarity. These are the 3 real ceilings in PoE2. Difficulty, I don't consider a ceiling in PoE2. You hit max difficulty very quickly in this game, and you exceed it on tons of builds. I feel like any build can exceed it, and these casting builds far, far exceed difficulty. After you've exceeded difficulty, you need to scale something else. Speed, efficiency, and rarity make sense to me, and that's why there's certain really unusual decisions like Lightning Warp. I'll drop in a showcase after this explanation of a 200% Delirious map I just ran, and I'll do like a little voiceover of that to just point out some things. Okay, let me go through the major decisions I've made. First of all, with gem links, here's what's going on in the Spellslinger. We are running Powered by Verisium, and this costs 155 ward and has a cooldown time, and it generates 4 Verisium infusions. These infusions can be used by any of our spells, but basically what it is a constant 3 cold infusions for the Spark, and occasionally a lightning infusion for the Flame Wall if we want it. We also run Animus Exchange. So one thing that's amazing about this archetype in general is that we are constantly replenishing life, and so we can constantly use life, energy, shield, and mana as a resource that, we don't have to care about the downside of. So this thing eats up your life and then gives you Runic Ward. It can even overflow the Runic Ward, so you don't have to stack tons of Runic Ward on gear. I've got it on my gloves and my boots, which didn't have, the best ES rolls to begin with, so not too much of a loss. And I've got enough Runic Ward for the Powered by Verisium. Now, I've also tested out putting another Powered by Verisium in Cast on Crit, because the real limiter here is the cooldown. And we do run cooldown recovery too to try and reduce it, but we're still at 4 seconds. So if you had these alternating in Cast on Crit and in Spellslinger, and the game does let you do it because they're in, they're as support gems or whatever, you would, potentially get double. All right, so that's what's going on with these 3. Then the other thing that's going on is we have Profane Ritual. This generates our power charges, which get gobbled up by Charge Infusion for a 24% more crit hit chance bonus. Also, we suck it in Charge Infusion 2, which is constantly giving us Endurance and Frenzy charges, which gives us more energy shield and more skill speed, which is more cast speed. There's times where it feels like my cast speed exceeds whatever the server can handle, and it just looks like there's like half as many sparks going out as there should be. I haven't looked into whether that's really happening or not, but that's basically how fast we're doing things and how constantly we're regenerating with this Spellslinger setup. It's been very optimal, very enjoyable. Again, there's ways to get more damage, but we're not trying to exceed the difficulty ceiling just for the sake of it. We're trying to be faster, more efficient, and scale rarity. Cast on Crit link, you'll not believe how good this is until you see the showcase. Lightning Warp does 2 things in particular. One, it helps us travel real quickly. Demon Form dodge is slow, and also the Spark movement speed penalty is ridiculous. Look how slow that is when I'm moving around and casting. So the Lightning Warp just is used for travel. Like, we bounce all over the map with Lightning Warp constantly. Basically how this gem works, when there's an enemy in call range, it queues up, and as soon as it has the energy from the meta gem, from the Cast on Crit, you bounce over to that thing and you explode it. You also create Shocked Ground, and you create a Lightning Infusion, which gets converted into a Fire Infusion, which gets, can be used by other things if you want to use it with other things. And then there's Arc. This one is an idea I borrowed from the Stormweavers this season. They all seem to be running Arc. There's 2 things you get from this. One is the chaining damage, which even though the damage number isn't as impressive as what you're getting with overlapping sparks, just the comprehensiveness of the clear when you're constantly arcing is unbelievable, and you just won't believe it until you see it. And then even on bosses, so we've dropped Comet. Bosses are always immediately shocked because of this, and we have 50% increase shock magnitude, so bosses are like 30% shocked, which is pretty solid. Scions helps the arc do it even more comprehensively. And then Adaluis and Boundless, if you wanted to drop Scions, you could run Utrids and bump all of these up. I don't think it's really necessary, but you could do that if you wanted to. Okay, let's go on to items. I'm not going to go over like every single decision I made with items, but I am going to call out like a few that I think are really important. First is the belt. You can get 3 max fire res on your belt. That's basically all this belt does. You can also get an essence enchant on the belt that is fire damage recouped as life. And if you're still on a rare belt, those 2 in combination can't be beat. Like, the belt could just have 2 mods, plus 3 fire res and 29% fire damage recouped as life, and you're good to go. Perfect belt. Now, there is a better in slot, which is Headhunter or Blood Mage, and those are just so expensive, I never got there. But yeah, belt is huge. The next one is your Sacrosanctum. So I've been slamming these all league to try and get one that has the highest % damage taken recouped as life, because when you have more on your gear, you need less on the tree, and then your tree's available for other awesome things. So get one with this enchant right here. You can slam them if you want. It seems like I've only hit it twice, and I've slammed like 200 of them, so I don't think the weighting is very much in your favor. Lastly, the gloves. These are a self-craft. I went through 4 iterations of trying to craft these. There is quite a bit of deterministicness in this craft. What I decided to go for was fracturing a good roll chance to pierce, so that way we could drop Pierce 3 from Spark. Now, I do think this says Pierce Unenemy, and this in combination with something else out there, my Spark Pierce chance is 104. I think that's just the Pierce one time, and Pierce 3 is Pierce constantly. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, though. I could be wrong on that. In any case, 1 Pierce is enough for what we do. So we fractured 94 there. Then we Chaos spammed +2 Proj. Then you roll any prefix you want, and you Hysteria Essence to remove the prefix and add the crit damage bonus. And then your suffixes are done. Then I perfect exalted a double prefix. I think I hit 1. Then I used Whittles and Greater Chaos to hit the second. And then I did Ancient Rib, Omen of Light rerolls to hit the Proj speed. I'm not happy with the tier 2 Proj speed there. I want to reroll even better, maybe even for max life instead of Proj speed. But yeah, that's kind of how these gloves work. You have to socket in the Colors, it's a weird name, Colors Hunt, in order to roll all these projectile modifiers. But look at the damage difference. So 102, 800 on Spark, 72 on Spark. That is insane, right? And Proj speed is an inherent damage increase that doesn't even show up on the tooltip, because that means the sparks are overlapping more frequently. At a certain point, it doesn't matter because there is a limiter built into Spark, but you scale it where you can. Why not? The wand, I will call out, this is like a ridiculous tier wand. After they pushed the patch where they got rid of this thing that makes this cast speed cold damage modifier, I farmed up 400 div and bought this wand outright. I don't know if this is a mirror tier wand. It could be now that it's like a legacy wand. But yeah, it's a +5 lightning, crit, spell damage, elemental damage, extra lightning. It's like the perfect wand, right? Maybe it can be better in some way. Ask Curse. Everything can be better if you're cursed. But yeah, that's going on with the wand. Everything else is rare gear. None of it is min-max. This amulet is like, okay, it's 100 div plus, but there's like, 1,000 div ammies that are absolutely insane. These rings are actually, pretty par. These are pretty mediocre. You can roll, spell damage, spell crit, all sorts of good stuff on these rings. Focus is pretty solid. And I think maybe there's a legacy focus now too. I'm not sure if that's legacy on focus as well. It's worth mentioning that the energy shield on focus is really important. You can really stack it. And then you can also take nodes where you scale that focus energy shield from the tree and even from jewels. So that's like pretty worth mentioning. This flask, this is going back to like the basics of the build, but this flask you just want free recoup, so go get a 30% or it's like 2 exalt or whatever. I don't see there's anything else with skill gems to call out. There's a lot of decisions you can make with Spark. I think Valenas and Rockiatas are essential if you want to go the lightning setup. But after that, you can really decide. And honestly, I do so much damage. I don't notice much of a difference with these last 3 supports. So yeah, you get to experiment. Flame Wall is a lot of damage boost. If you go the Fortress Cascade Mag route, you get this big Flame Wall that like totally captures all the sparks all the time. Highly recommend that. The Arbiter's proc is not very consistent on it, so that might be something to think about. Frost Bomb is not needed. I have it on my alt set for 4. It would be for fire infusions for the Comets on demand if you're running Comet. Ellie Weakness also totally not needed. You actually don't want to put it on things because you're running Rockiatas. The reason I have it is because it is a high Infernal Fame cost. So as I'm running along, if I want to just quickly get some recoup going, it's like 3 of these and we're good to go. Frostwall, also not really essential. It does make use of lightning infusions, which you will have, and it can be helpful for taking down a boss if you don't have any demon form stacks. Orb of Storm is actually really important. This gives you a guaranteed 2 cold infusions whenever you want, and it's really quick. You put it on Unleash with Overabundance, and you have them constantly. And then lastly, charge regulation with Siphon Elements and Catals is very, very important. The Catals reduces all your cooldowns, including that for your Spellslinger link-ups. And then, of course, Demon Form is pretty obvious. Okay, the tree. I've made a few choices on nodes that might seem distinct, and I'll talk about the jewels and some of the options, and one idea I have that I'll probably experiment with even after making this video. So this tree is fairly ideal. I think for the most part now, you can ignore the weapon sets, and I might reset it all just so that they're gone from the POBs and they don't confuse anybody. The only weapon setting we do now is Sigil. So if you wanted to scale AoE and duration for Sigil, you could, but everything dies so fast, I feel like even that is kind of pointless. Here's some decisions I made on the tree that I really like. Recoup speed. Basically, what this does, if you don't know, when we were talking about recoup and how it happens over 8 seconds and you get these ticks per second, this reduces the seconds and increases the tick. So in some ways, it's very good. For fast play, it's very, very good. And for the Alloy's replenishment, it is very, very good. You get a little bit over here as well. We're at about like 50%, so pretty solid. Another thing I do is curse reduction. So we run the creations warding and the armor for 50, and then we get another 30 here and another 15 here. So that's 95% reduction. And then what's really cool about warding flash is you get 30% damage per curse on you. So you suddenly love curse maps. Curse map effect is down to 1. So like a temp change is like -1 and LE weakness is -1, but you get a 30% damage boost per curse. So being cursed is great. You also get energy shield from equip focus on these nodes, which if you stack ES on your focus like I talked about, you can really double dip there for a lot of power. I have some ideas for lucky lightning damage and a support gem related to lucky lightning damage that I might explore. I won't talk too much about that. The rest of the tree has been pretty standard for my builds. I did go ahead and take dampening shield. There's just a lot of mini stun, and with demon dodge, it gets really, really annoying. So the ailment and stun thresholds here help with that quite a bit. And then lastly, the biggest thing to talk about is the from nothing and the heroic jewel. So if for some reason you're new and you don't know, this jewel is essential. Our Infernal Flame here is 1396. We slot the jewel in, we get this node where our int no longer does anything, and we're down to 770. Some people push it down to 600, 500 with other modifiers. Basically, that means you can get more recoup stacking sooner and net more recoup. The other thing this jewel does is, based on the seed number, it converts all the passives and notables in Radius to do other things. We have a very helpful sub-channel in the Discord called Verified Heroic Tragedy Seeds, where people drop in what they found. So if you go online and search and you see one, you can come in here into this channel and hit Control F, and you can search like 661, for instance, and see if it's there, right? Or where's one that somebody's actually posted? 4165. Oh, I have 4565. Let me see what that does. So here's where you can kind of see what it does. And then there's two options with this jewels, because you can run a from nothing. That's for chaos inoculation. Let me pull this out over here. And then you can allocate any of these without pathing to them, or you can do from nothing with conduit and allocate any of the conduit radius gems without doing them. Now, conduit is really expensive, just so you know. And I'd actually like to switch over to it because I got a bunch of lightning nodes over here that I can't access. But yeah, it's expensive. Other things you can get in here is general spell damage, general prod speed, general cast speed. You can also get recoup nodes, and there's one that's +3 fire res, which is like ridiculous. Last thing I'll mention is the Sapphire. So because we scale crit bonus in both variants, but especially in the low life variant, look into how to deterministically craft this jewel. The TLDR of it is you need a jewel with 2 suffixes and 1 prefix, and then you're going to go for 50-50 with some delirium emotion or whatever those are called. If you win that 50-50, you're good. The rest of it is like solved. And I recommend checking out Connor's video, One Mana Left. He's got a video that's pretty viral. You've probably already seen it, that tells you how to craft these specifically for this build, but you can craft them for any build. I think that's it for the tree. I don't think this is a perfect tree. I don't think these items are perfect. And like I talked about with the gem links, I think there's more experimentation you can do with certain parts of the gem links. However, I do think that what I have done here has pushed the direction of speed, efficiency, and rarity. I'm at like 80 rarity non-charm, so like almost 100 with charm, and it could be even better with a little bit more spend. So I think I've pushed those very, very well, and they successfully clear the hardest content with ease. So that's what's going on there. Here's some other gear I don't have because it is expensive and I don't RMT or hideout very much, and I'm a dad and it's busy. So the Giga Amulet, I would want to get a second cast on crit and go with the real Comet setup plus a Lightning Warp, and then in my other setup would be double Arc. And then you can get more skills. I think I've seen like a +6 or something ridiculous. The items are just ridiculous this league. Like the game is so easy with these items. You can get an Anoint on Helmet. I think it's like an 80 div socket. It's like the Ravens something. Let me see if I can find it. Raven Touched Shard. This allows you to anoint your helmet. It's like 100D. I haven't done it yet. You could go Barbaric Strength. You can get an extra jewel slot with the Zarox. There's something called Thaumaturgic whatever. It gives you charges, which would free up 2 slots on your Slinger, maybe for Flame Wall. A lot of good stuff you could do with Anoint on Helmet. I talked about the Giga Rings. For me, the ideal ring is like some combination of Breach Tree nodes for spell damage. Cast speed is a must. Max life is cool. Stats are helpful, and resists are a must. Your big boy belt, if you're doing Breach Abyss, Headhunter is your main. Otherwise, Mage Blood. I don't really know what you want on the Mage Blood. Probably Speed and Crit. I don't even really know what all is out there. Big boy jewels, I just talked about those. And then the wand. There's a guy named Big Daddy. Totally vouches content. He has a really cool approach to the game. I really like watching what he does, even when I don't follow anything that he's doing, because I just think he just does the game really well. And I think his content's really great. He's got a deterministic Giga Wand craft video that's awesome. Go out there and check that out. All right, I'm going to clip on the showcase to this. Hope you enjoy. If you have questions, come on by the Discord and drop them into the Spark Stuff Infernalist. If you're a new player, come on in here to New Player Problems. If you're trying to push the envelope of the final form of the build, come on in here to push into God tier. And then most people are in here doing awesome stuff. It's been a great, helpful, and very productive community in this Discord this league. So come join us, and big shout out to everyone who's helping each other out in this Discord. Gizmodius, Blizz, Adamanter are all here. S. Laney has been super helpful in here, and many others. I'm noticing new folks that are becoming regulars, helping new players out. You guys are awesome. Thanks for doing that, especially during the times when I am not available to be in this Discord and helping folks out. My next project this league, I'm going to push this build a little bit more in the envelope, and then I'm going to hop over to Stormweaver and do some similar things, but sort of min-maxing some of the infusion synergies that we have this league and pushing the boundaries of Adonai's. There's really only 2 builds that I've been supporting the guides for persistently, and that is my Spark Stormweaver and this Infernalist that we just talked about. I do have a Hollow Palm guide that I'm going to revisit with more time, and then a Hardcore SSF guide that I'm going to revisit with more time. Thanks, everyone, for watching and for joining on the journey this season. Drop me any questions in the comments or in the Discord, and have a good one. All right, I'm recording a little voiceover after the fact here, so I can be a little selective about what I say. I did a quick hover of all the gear there, and the tablets, and the Waystone. It's a 6 mod. We're at 170 Deli. It'll scale up to 200 here. Here's the pre-buff. This is the only time we use Elemental Weakness to just get a few quick recoup stacks. And we're off to the races. This shows when I use Frostball. It's when I'm not properly buffed yet and we run into something difficult. So that was like a high Deli unique monster, and the Frostball helps take it out before we get ample damage supplementation. You notice I have the Endurance charge up there from the charge support gem. And with the Endurance charge, we're at 6k ES and 2.1k health, which is a crazy healthy pool at constant replenishment. It really, I think I don't talk enough about how tanky this build is. Watch the damage I take here. Boom, 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 boom. And we're just good for some reason. Yeah. And then you can see me jumping all over the screen. That's not me blinking, and that's not some edit in the video. That is Lightning Warp. Look how far it has taken me. Also very helpful in Abyss. When you have those monsters in the clouds that just won't die, it'll blink in there and get you for them. That monster is the one with the shield that reflects. That guy's hurting my showcase here. It's making me look bad. I think there's one more of those later on. Okay, I think somewhere in there I reset Demon Form. I didn't notice that I did it, but I noticed that I'm in 35 stacks here. So, and I often reset it more frequently than I need to. You just don't want to worry about it, and as you can tell, the damage is fine. That little Ellie weakness there was just to keep the recoup up. Now that we're 50 stacks, the degen is noticeable. A lot of mini stuns in there, and this is another reflect minion making me look bad. I mean, the fact that that minion dies that fast is pretty awesome. The build truly shines beyond all other builds in content like this, like Ritual Breach and the Runic Tablets, where you are standing still. I think just Exposition in general. You just want everything to be deleted. It's so cozy, especially with Arc. Arc, like, you don't really see it happening. It happens so fast, but it like channels through and just like annihilates everything. Got really lucky with Divines in this showcase. That does not normally happen. Showcase client. Okay, this boss is going to be a good example, not because it dies instantly, but because I got totally debuffed. So I'm at like 0 demon form stats right here and like no pre-recoup. Now, if I was running Comet version, this is where Comets are nice. Comets would still delete this boss instantly. The Arc is going to take a little while to do its thing. And then, of course, all the damage is from Rockiata Spark. Now, that was 8 million on 200% Deli, so it's cool.